Welcome to episode 5 of Between Sundays. We have wrapped up our Kingdom Thinking series, but there's a couple of topics that we wanted to continue to hit on and we felt like would be appropriate as we're thinking about what does it look like to have a kingdom mindset in the world that we live in. And so we are in now a few weeks into football season, college football, NFL football, high school football. So we thought it'd be fun just to kind of talk a little bit about sports and how we approach that as Christians, which might seem kind of weird to some folks, but to others it will make perfect sense why this would be a topic that we would cover. So today I have Seth Finch, our student pastor, joining me, and Alex Robinson, our community pastor. I'm Zach Casey, the executive pastor at City Awakening. And, sports are a big deal today. For both fans and participants alike. It's a major time commitment, financial commitment, energy commitment for a lot of people, whether they're playing the sport, they have kids playing the sport, they're watching the sport as a fan, going to games, those kind of things. So why do you guys, just off the top of your head, we haven't really prepped for this. This is truly just conversational. Why do you think it's important or necessary to do an episode on sports like this?
Well, I mean, I think sports are woven into most people's lives on some level, whether, like, for my parents, they didn't care about sports playing growing up, but then I was big into sports, so all of a sudden sports became a huge part of their lives. So whether you're a parent with a kid doing sports or you're a fan doing sports, it just affects so many people's lives on some level. And so it's very topical. And as even here in Florida in particular, it's one of the most sports-heavy states that we in the country. You know, most major cities have 1 or 2, 3 major sports franchises and or a college, and so it's everywhere. You can't go 5 feet without seeing someone's license plate or T-shirt or something where sports is not involved around here.
Yeah. I think I've heard someone say that sports, as we think about them, kind of came about as essentially almost like practice for war. You'd have a bunch of, usually, your young men in your area, you would have like a war season essentially when you'd live. It's like you'd plant your crops, and then once you planted them, you'd go fight battles and stuff to keep your land, and then you'd come back and you'd reap your crops, and then you'd do it all over again. And like sports became kind of the practice of that. But I think we like it and get into it, especially on the kind of the fandom side of things. I'm sure we'll talk about kind of the playing it and trying to achieve stuff through it as well. But I think we like it on the fandom side because all of us have, and maybe this isn't great, like replacement, but all of us have these kind of like tribalism, clan type things, desires in us to like, oh, here are my own, and we will be, we'll win and we'll be victorious. And I think sports give us something ideally of like a safer outlet for that, of saying like, oh, here are the people I'm going to cheer for. And therefore when they win, it feels good. And we can have kind of banter about my team beat your team, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, like anything we talk about, we'd love to keep that in its proper context. When we don't is when we now get sinful about it, and it becomes too important to us and dominates our lives and causes us to, spout off at people in ways we shouldn't. So it's, finding that balance. But I think that's why, I think innately we all have some like tribalism, jingoism type stuff in us, and we look a little more positive outlet as me cheering for my team as opposed to us fighting it out over differences. And sports gives us that outlet.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, earlier this summer, or back in the summer, I heard Jefferson Bethke. He was talking about he was kind of doing a talk on manhood, biblical manhood, addressing a group of guys, and he used the field as a I guess a metaphor for where manhood develops. And you saying that makes me think, because he talked about the field as in terms of planting, like as a farmer working in the field as a battlefield, where obviously there's, as a role in that, and then also the field as in terms of sports field, which also gives us all of those give us opportunity and the right conditions, if you will, specifically as men, but I mean, there's development as women as well, but for our character to be tested, our endurance, our perseverance, our grit, all those aspects that everybody talks about, kind of the benefits of sports. And so I think that's some of the positives of it, right? There's a lot of good things to participating in sports, even organized sports, having a team, cheering for it. Some people might argue or ask the question, should Christians be competitive? Or is there a negative side to us being bought in from a competitive aspect?
I definitely think there's a line that we have to check ourselves at, where and that line is, where does it become an idol? You know, is winning, is my team winning, or me competing and winning? Is that the goal, or is the goal looking back to, am I doing my best to glorify Christ and point to Him in my winning and in my fandom and how I carry myself? I don't think there's an issue with a Christian being competitive necessarily, though. I think that's something that God's actually given us to go out there and fight and accomplish something, and goes back to those good things in sports. But I definitely think that Satan wants to push us over the line, and where it becomes all about my glorification and my winning and my victory, and not really why I'm doing it in the first place.
Yeah, I've seen, you see competitives go awry all the time. Like, I see it at different levels. I mean, like when I was younger, if the Florida Gators lost like a basketball game or a football game, it would legitimately like ruin my next couple of days. Like, I would be distraught, and it would be terrible. Thankfully, I'm not like that now, or else I'd be distraught a lot because we lose a lot in football. But it is what it is. But I've seen that, and I've seen people at like pick up ultimate frisbee games like almost get into fights because their team wasn't playing well. And you just look around and you go, "Hey man, nobody's here to watch us. Like, it's a bunch of like guys in their 20s to 40s trying to stay in shape, running around catching a frisbee." But yet something in us gets that that just desire to win. So yeah, I think again it's something that can be pointed and used well when you're looking at life to say, hey, I'm going to be competitive. I think in a lot of sports, psychologists try to do this with people too, is you try to focus your main competition on competing like with yourself, like trying to do that's why some of the like racing sports and things like that can be a little healthier, because it's like, I'm going to swim my best race. I'm going to run my best race and let the chips fall where they may at that point. So yeah, you can compete against yourself. Am I doing what it takes to get better at this? Am I glorifying the Lord with my skills on this? And then I'm going to trust Him with the results, those kind of things. So I think there's a good side to competitiveness, but obviously there is the negative coin there that we can go to as well.
Yeah, it does make me think too, like as time has evolved, work has evolved, our tasks, I'm just thinking out loud, I wonder if from a fandom perspective, the intensity is what it is because there's almost like that living vicariously through the athletes on the field, because in the workplace or in our day-to-day, we maybe don't have that outlet for aggression or competitiveness in the same way. And so there's like a desire or an identifying with that with the players on the field. So you got people that are just going nuts from the stands because of that. So there's kind of a, interesting to think about from that standpoint as well, that there's that hunger in us, right? Like you guys are saying, there's a hunger for that competitiveness, for that fight, but we don't always have a way to get that out in kind of the lifestyle that most of us have today. So when we think about from the fan standpoint, like participating in sports is one thing, and there's the challenges of that. But what about the culture that we see that's been formed around celebrity athletes, the immense amount of money that gets poured into sports? What are the problems with that, if any, do you think? And how should we respond to those as Christians, or participate or not participate?
This is tough. This is a tough one. I think that's the big drive behind what we see in some of the like youth sport movements of things, where it's, you got to have a trainer by the time you're 7. You got to be specialized, and because the hope is that you can be good enough to get to the point where you're going to like make money off this and get endorsement deals and NIL now in college or whatever. So I think it's up to the ante at the lower level of like, oh, this could really like, you could cash in and really kind of make it. And, the stats are ridiculous of like how many kids are going to go on to play varsity sports, and how many are going to go play college, and how many are going to play pro. It just becomes this infinitesimally small number. all chasing that one thing. So I think that certainly influences some of the negative, even at the lowest levels of sports. Of man, if we could just get our kid to do this, that would be so awesome. But then you also see guys that get to that level and use that platform really well, and give glory to the Lord and have now the resources to help fund great things and do things. So again, like everything in life, I don't think any level of achievement is necessarily a bad thing for a Christian to have. It's just, what are you going to do with it, and what's your foundation when you get there? Of, am I doing this thing for the Lord? Am I going to look for now opportunities to bless Him and glorify Him with this? We would hope that we're doing the same thing if we're going into an office 9 to 5, versus if we're going and training to play a sport. But you now have kind of a platform. So I think it's just looking for your platform, but recognizing that in the pursuit of that, we can, again, make it an idol, make it something that we now would sin to achieve, or kind of forget God on the way. That once we get there, we kind of forget God and say, man, now I can do whatever I want, and just kind of live high on the hog. I think just having that foundation built protects you no matter where you fall kind of on that spectrum, hopefully.
Well, I think as you're going into, you talk about the young age that we're having kids with trainers and getting recruited and all this other stuff, NIL. And I think what's happened in sports as a whole is, for the longest time, you had team sports, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, that were team driven, and you had good players. But as within the last 10 years, with some of these shifts that we've seen with NIL, with social media, I think you've seen team sports become more individualized. And so now that's trickled down to the younger generations, where it's like, now I've got to make myself known. I've got to make myself more important at 14, 15, 16 in high school, and then obviously in college. And that can be a very easy stumbling block, and self-centeredness can become the goal if you're going down that. And so if you don't have those checks and balances in place, then all of a sudden you can look up and not recognize yourself, and you've become the idol. Not even the sport, you've become the idol because you've been trying to prop yourself up for so long. And I think that's the culture that's happening in sports as a whole right now that we have to fight against as Christians.
Yeah, it's interesting, the argument about the benefit of team sports and being a part of a team and the coaching, and in some ways the focus has gone away from that, and it has become very individualistic, even within the team sports. The major basketball, football, soccer, baseball, those kind of things, which does lead to all those issues, and makes it about the player, the person, the child, even if we're talking about the younger players. And you certainly see that on the grand scale, on the professional level. I'm not a huge sports fan. I don't follow a lot, but I know enough to see everything from the way players handle their contracts, and are shifted from team to team, to the thing that I always get a kick out of is watching them arrive at the games and the things that they wear.
Fit check.
Yeah, I mean, like yesterday, I think I just happened to click over and see Travis Kelce coming up to the game, and he had on a suit, but his pants were torn off at the knee or cut off at the knee or something like that. And it's like, and the commentators were joking about him making a statement. It's just like, who else would do that? You know what I'm saying? Some of the things these guys wear, but it's just, and I don't know what their heart behind it is, but it just seems like, yeah, let me just make a statement for myself in this so that it catches their eye, keeps my name in front of them, those kind of things. You guys kind of mentioned this, but has there been a shift, Seth, you talked about this, in sports culture in more recent years where it's a bigger risk for people to participate, kids to participate in sports? Is it harder now, do you think, than it was in the past?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe harder is the right word. It's definitely different. I think the rise of the internet and social media and trying to get yourself out there, because as I used to have students that have gone on to play different college sports, and they're sitting there talking to me in 9th and 10th grade. I've got to get my Twitter. They didn't participate in social media as heavily, but they're like, well, I have to have this social media. I have to have Twitter, or Instagram. I've got to put my film on there. I've got to be talking to coaches. And those are things that, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you didn't have to think about as a high school kid. And so I do think it can be that can be a pitfall for a kid. And as we go back to our social media podcast, how, there's a lot of perils as a 16-year-old making decisions on there if it's unchecked by your parents. And so now you almost feel there's a necessity to be on there as if I want to go play college ball. So I think that can be dangerous. I think that's something that I didn't have to encounter, that we probably didn't have to encounter when we were playing sports. Not that any of us were star athletes necessarily going to go play
the
next. Yeah, right. But I do think that's something specifically from a student standpoint that they have to wrestle with, and also seeing the people that they look up to. And I don't think there's anything wrong with looking up to athletes, understanding that they're not God, that they can be a role model, be an example. But these guys that they're looking up to, and the way they carry themselves and the individual nature that they carry. Well, now they're trying to emulate that, and then that can become a pitfall for them as well. And so I definitely think it's different, and maybe it's harder, but I do think each generation comes and goes, and there's difficulties for us each. So I don't know if we can accurately say if it's harder or easier, but it's definitely different. It's a new age that we're in sports.
So practically speaking, what would you say? Let's take it twofold. What would you say to? Because I think we all played sports in high school at least. What would you say to a young athlete who is maybe 10, 11, 12 years old, and right now their sight is set on, making it big, whatever? How do they handle that moving forward, or like what advice would you give them?
I mean, I think it's worthwhile to have, to have a goal for something and to try to be achieving something. I'd rather meet a kid that had hopes and dreams and they were willing to put in the work toward it than just to be kind of like, just live life. I'm just going to have fun, whatever. It doesn't matter. Like I think it's a better thing to try to do that. I think always trying to temper expectations, not like pour cold water on like a kid, but just like regulate expectation to be like, okay, well, let's shoot for like the more attainable goal first, and then we'll see what happens on the back end. Most kids are not going to go become a professional athlete, but you can say, hey, if you want to play a varsity sport, here are the things you can work on, and we'll do these things, and you're just going to better yourself, and we're going to see, you're going to get stronger, do these kind of things, and you get that kind of picture. There's a kid on Instagram, I'm blanking on his name, he's in like Iowa or something, and he seems like this relatively not that athletic kid, and he started posting these videos where it's like day whatever of me trying to make the varsity basketball team, and he got this like huge following, and it's literally, he started from like, I want to say he was like in 7th grade, and again, he doesn't, when he first starts, you're like, this is a long journey, like I don't know if he's gonna make it, but he just would post like what he did each day to work out, and it was like, got up at 5, went to the Y, got a workout in, and then worked on these skills. And it's him just like shooting shots, and then played some 5-on-5 and did this thing. And he gained this huge following of people who are just like, I am so emotionally invested in this kid playing for a random Iowa high school. But he just had this dream and he worked on it. And he just seemed, that was his goal. And so I think it's a good thing to point you toward thing. And again, not making it like the God of your life, but just saying like, hey, you can achieve something. And then if your skills warrant that you could go take it to another level and you enjoy playing the sport, my advice to most people is like, carry it as far as you're willing to take it and want to pursue, and then see what, see what doors the Lord opens for you. And you go from there. Because it's a great thing to be on. I think of like team sports. It's a great thing to be on a team. Like some of my most fondest memories are just random bus rides going to play a game that nobody cares about. Nobody now cares about that game, but I still remember random things that happened and things like that. And like the opportunities you get to bond with people and be around people. And I got to, be around guys that, if I were to say, and like I've talked about this with my parents, if I were to say like, hey, I'm going to go hang out with these guys, my mom would have been like, no, you're not. Like, you're not going to that party. You're not going to their house. Like that's not the crowd you're going. But like, okay, when you're on a team, you know, when
locker
you're
room,
playing on the
right.
team in the locker room, like you're gonna, you know, you're gonna be around them, and you get to have some influence, hopefully, on their life, and you know, that I think that was a formative part of my life. So yeah, I would say just use it for the good things it is. I think like many things in life, God gives us good things to enjoy. It's enjoyable to be a fan of a team and watch them play, and you know, go to a game and see all the pageantry of it and all that kind of stuff. Those are enjoyable things. So enjoy the things that are good about it, but have the right perspective on, hey, this is something that God has given to me to enjoy and to follow and to try to be a light in. And that's what my goal is going to be as I do this. Yeah. And if it helps me better myself going forward, great. If I realize that it's starting to become an idol, then I need to have the humility to do that, or someone needs to be able to check me on it. And, you know, just like anything else we would pursue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And I think if you're talking to a 10-year-old kid who's really passionate about being a football star someday, you can't eat a whole elephant in one bite. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I think setting those goals while understanding that this is a big goal that I have, but having these milestone goals along the way, and then parents being active in being that check and that balance for them at that age, especially. How are you pointing towards Jesus in these goals? He's obviously giving you these gifts and abilities. So how can you use them for his glory while also working towards this goal that you feel like he's laid on your heart? You know what I'm saying? And letting those two things marry one, like be one with one another, and then see how far God takes it and what doors he does open up. And, you know, the odds of you playing in the NFL are probably pretty low. Heck, the odds of you playing in college are probably pretty low. But you never know how God's going to use and how they're going to grow and develop. But keeping Christ at the center of it is critical. So.
Yeah, I think fighting against that identity, that it becomes your identity, that is who you are as an athlete, I think is what's key too, is for, especially get into the high school age, if you get some success, if you get recognized, start getting recognized, or even if you really are terrible and struggle, or you have that big fail or whatever, like remembering, and for parents to point to their kids, like, this is not your identity. Like, you can play a sport, you can be an athlete, but your identity is not wrapped up in that, but in Christ. Which leads to my next question, maybe harder. What do you say to the adult, maybe the parent, but to the adult who is just passionate about sports? What warnings are there for them? Maybe this is something you tell yourself. I don't know. How do we as Christians find that balance to be a great fan, to be involved, cheer for our team, but not go over the top?
I think if you're an adult, and you're super passionate about sports, and God's given you the ability, be a coach. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the things.
Have an outlet for
it.
Like
go be a coach. It scratches the competitive itch. It lets you pour into the next generation of young ones at whatever age it is. Maybe it's you're coaching your daughter's first grade softball team, or maybe you're coaching varsity sports, whatever it is. But go be a coach. Go be in those places where sports, is not necessarily inherently Christian, and go be a Christian. Go be a light in those places.
And I've never been in a league where there's not enough, or where there's too many coaches.
No,
always looking for coaches.
Refs and coaches. There's always gonna be a shortage. Yeah. Always gonna be a shortage. So like go explore that as an outlet, as an opportunity. And then as a fan, remember that whether I'm in the stadium or I'm at my house, my yelling and my screaming and the things I say, are they reflecting Christ? Or are they not? You can be a passionate fan and be excited for your team while also glorifying the Lord in speech and conduct. And so keeping that lens up with whatever you're doing. It's not like for 3 hours on Sunday afternoon from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, I get to take that lens off,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
I don't think you get to be, I think maturing is realizing, like, I don't get to be a different person with a different moral code just like when my team is playing. Like, I don't get to say, or when I'm playing a sport or something like that. Because I would realize that, like, when I was in high school, or even like when I was in college, just playing like intramural sports or something, like the things you'll say in your head or out loud while you're playing a sport would like not be the things you do in normal life. And you're like, okay, I can't be two different people, right? I'm called to be, I'm called to follow God regardless of this. I can't allow like sports Alex to be this like incredibly harsh person, and then this other, I turn it off afterward. So I think it's just finding that place where I might act a little differently when I'm like watching a game just because it's that different environment, but not I'm going to compromise in the middle of that because, well, I'm just so fired up right now.
Yeah.
I think, just not, you don't get to say like, hey, it's Saturday or Sunday of football season. This is who I am right now. And then switch that off and say, now I'm back to being,
Right.
The more contained, controlled version of myself.
Yeah, and there's a lot of actually negative fallout from that. I've talked to many people whose, as a child, that was their dad,
Sure.
right? And they got caught in the crossfire, if you will, standing in front of the TV or being around after the team lost or those kind of things. And so it has a ripple effect that has a lasting impact for generations to come, literally, because people will carry that with them for a long time, those kind of things. So I think it is important to remember that and to be consistent with who we are. Be who you're going to be, and don't let sports or anything else, for that matter, change that, as you guys are saying. And I think about it in terms of discipleship. We talk about this a lot, but like how it affects our head, heart, and hands, right? So in our head, how we think about that competitiveness, like winning above all is not the goal. Yes, we want to win. You play to win. But that can't become the idol, right? Or making it me-centered, as we were talking about, how I think about myself and view myself. All affects my head, my heart. What do I worship? I mean, we talk about being in a college football stadium is a great picture of worship, right? You got the fans, 100,000 fans going nuts. That's a form of worship. But for us as Christians, we have to ask, like, what are we ultimately worshiping? And what are we making an idol? And then our hands, of course, as you guys were saying, how we act, how we speak, how we prioritize our time and energy, how it affects our relationships, the language that we use, all those things. And so when we think about it as a disciple, we can always evaluate our head, heart, and hands in those ways. Which leads to my last question. As we're thinking about this, we're all pastors. We serve at the church. We've been a part of the church. How does sports compete with church, and how do we deal with that, or how can we guide our people in that struggle as well?
Seth, you ever had sports
loaded-
compete with?
that's a loaded
You
question.
ever had sports compete with
Especially
student
for
ministry?
student ministry.
A1 example there.
I'll tell you this, man. Student ministry specifically. If your kid sees at whatever age it is, obviously I handle 12 to 18-year-olds predominantly, but if your kid sees at that age that practice on Wednesday night or Sunday night or Thursday night, or whatever it is more important than gathering with the body of Christ, man, it makes it so much easier for Satan to push them away from the church when they turn 18, and they get the opportunity to make their decisions on their own. And I've seen it a lot. I've seen really good Christian families that love the Lord and kids that are in the youth band and are leaders and all these different things. But when sports becomes that main thing and it takes over from gathering with the body of Christ and being in that community and being in those gospel-centered conversations, it makes it so easy for them to leave. Mm-hmm. And it's something that you can affect now. It's not too late. You can change those things now. You can prioritize gathering with the body of Christ now, and sports can come second, and that's okay. Your kid may get a little annoyed at you at first, but that's your job as a parent. Your job is not to be the friend, but to be the leader of your household, to pour into your kids. So yeah, it's easy though. It's easy for that to come a slippery slope.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big one I've had experience with too. I mean, we had someone that came to our church early on that it was a big deal when they started coming to our church because he had to miss a basketball game he had played in on Sunday mornings for years. And that was like a big hurdle for him. And he ended up coming. It was a good thing for him at the time, but I think anything especially that like eats up your schedule can become something that draws you away from community in the church. And I would say just, utilize, again, sports are like anything else. We can utilize them for good. We can utilize them for bad. If you love sports, utilize them to bring people together around it. If your kid plays in a league, how am I getting to know the other parents there? Do we have relationships with them? Can they come over to our house? Hey, I found out that this guy from work also likes this team. It's like my team or the opposite team. Hey, we're about to play each other. Why don't y'all come over or do these kind of things? Like, you can facilitate, and then you get the best of both worlds, right? You're still enjoying the thing you like, but now you're getting to do that toward like a kingdom purpose, which I think is the sweet spot. When we find that, that's when like personal ministry becomes easy.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, I can just enjoy the stuff I like strategically for the Lord. Great. Like that's stuff that lasts.
Yeah.
So I think just finding the niche for that, and then being just ready in all seasons to kind of give that.
Yeah, think about how exciting or energizing that to be somebody who's passionate about sports. And we talk about living missionally or finding your purpose or how God's calling you to use, we use the E word, evangelism. Like, that sounds scary. But as people think about, well, if I can do that around sports, like that sounds exciting, right? Like, if I can use that, but that's the whole point we talk about. It's like Monday through Saturday or Sunday afternoon, like using that as a missional opportunity to connect with other people, build those relationships. And then I think, again, that's one of the great things about sports is it's a common ground for people to come around. Even if their teams are competing, there's still a camaraderie and an understanding there that's good. And I do think it does compete with the church a lot. And unfortunately, some of that, I think, is the shift that, you're going to have to decide, like, am I going to say no to a Wednesday night practice? Am I going to say no to a tournament out of town on Sunday? We'll be there Saturday. Sorry, coach, but we can't make the Sunday game. Like, those are really, really hard decisions to make, and to have to tell your kid that this is what we're going to do if they're not on board with that. But to your point, Seth, like, as parents, like, we set the standard for that now that's going to carry over down the road once they move out of their house. And so I think just like all these things we've talked about in this series, like, be intentional, give thought to it. Don't just go with the flow and go and fall in line with the current of what everybody else is doing, but be prepared to go against the current and to make your own decisions and to make hard sacrificial decisions when it's necessary. And I think it can be a great thing. So I appreciate you guys joining us. If you have questions or comments you want us to address, there's a link in the description that you can send us a message. We'd love to follow up with you, possibly even answer that question on a future episode. So next time, we'll be talking about some other ways that our faith comes up against culture and how we can address those in practical ways as Christians. So thanks for tuning in.